Good evening. My name is Meir Lipschitz from the Beit Midrash. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. I wanted to discuss with you, actually I'm going to grab one of the Chumashim also, but I wanted to discuss tonight some of the ideas that come up in Parshas Mishpatim, which is this week's parsha, this week's portion from Sefer Shemos, the second book, the book of Exodus. So if anybody wants to follow along inside in the Chumash, Parshas Mishpatim starts on page 416 in the Hebrew, 417 in the English. We will probably not need the psukim that much. We probably won't need the actual text that much. But again, in case anybody sort of wants to follow along, that's where it is. So I would actually like to pose the first question. So if we look at the beginning psukim, let's look at those first few. I know I just said we're not going to do this, but ve'elah mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem, and these are the ordinances that you shall place before them. If you buy a Jewish bondsman, he shall work for 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go free for no charge. Let's remember that last week, which for them was immediately before, but for us last week, was the Aseret HaDivros, the 10 Commandments, Mount Sinai, the whole big show. Okay? And then coming off this, we now start some of the more interpersonal commandments, some of the day-to-day, the monetary stuff, the social requirements, not so much the spiritual things. And there are two questions that I have. The first question is, why is this what we go into? Why do we go to somewhat mundane matters coming off of the high from Mount Sinai, coming off the high of the Aseret HaDivros, the 10 Commandments? We go into the minutia and the details of monetary things, of social requirements. Aren't there greater things? But also, if you look at the very first one of these mishpatim, of these ordinances, if you buy a Jewish bondsman, we talk about avdus. This is the concept, and what the psukim continue to say is that if a Jewish male, for whatever reason, needs to is sold into slavery, there are two reasons for why that would happen. Either the person is so poor that they can't find other work, they sell themselves into this servitude, okay, and they can't be mistreated, but it's servitude, and it's not something that any of us really aspire to. Right? Imagine the 6-year-old sitting in kindergarten or something, and the teacher says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And he goes, "I want to be an Eved Ivri." Like it doesn't make sense. No one's going to do that. Okay? Either that, or if the person stole something and can't pay it back, does not have the money to repay, so the Beit Din sentences him to go and work for the person whom he had stolen from. Okay? So why do we open with these ideas is our first question tonight. Why do we start with these basic minutia, I might call them? And secondly, why is the first one of those details about avos, about servitude? Shouldn't it be about Shabbos in greater detail? About chesed, kibbud avim? Discuss something that's nicer, that's happier, that's more upbeat, and presumably more important also. So does anybody have any suggestions? This should be an interactive sort of experience.
They just left out this.
Okay. So it's on their minds.
Well,
they have a frame of reference, you're suggesting, right? They just, remember, we were slaves in Egypt for 210 years. And so avdus is something that seems familiar. Okay? And that's definitely, I would have to agree that that's true. The problem, though, is this avdus is something that we're not aspiring to. And especially, and this will come up in a few minutes, but we have psukim later on that tell us, Ki li b'nei Yisrael avadim avadayim. God tells us that the Jewish people are servants to me with a capital M there, okay? Servants to me, to God. They should not be servants to another man. So while it might be true that it's a familiar sort of thing for them, it's not something we're aspiring to. Okay? So to go back to that might not have been, far be it from me to say, but might not have been in God's best interest.
I'm wrong.
No, it's a valid point. I don't know if I'd go that far.
I'm used to it.
All right. Anybody else? If I didn't scare you with my response
First of all, the first thing that comes to your mind, and it's dated. I mean, if you had the foresight to see that we are going to evolve where we don't keep slaves, surely this would not have been entered.
Indentured servant. I don't want to use the word slave.
An indentured servant.
A bondsman, as the article puts it. Yeah. It is not a slave, right? I'm from the States. So when I hear slave, I think back to pre-Civil War slavery. Okay? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a bondsman, an indentured servant, a guy who is working for you because he can't pay his own way. So he sells himself into servitude.
Wouldn't it be the first thought in your mind would be that had they been given the Torah with the idea that tzedakah and giving would have been the prime objective of
Excellent.
taking a...
Good. It's a good point. So that was part of the question. This seems strange. Okay?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
In order to have a relationship with Hashem, you also have to have a relationship with each other. And that's the basis of having a relationship with Hashem. You cannot ignore another human being or mistreat him or in any way.
Right.
So we have to set a base of rules to know how to treat each other before we can think about Hashem. That's
Okay.
or parallel to that.
I would definitely agree with that. I'm very much inclined to agree with that, and the nods around the room suggest that everybody is inclined to agree with that. I'm also going to have to challenge that for myself and say, why is that true? Or even, is that really true? It resonates.
Image of God.
And it seems, okay, so, but would we say it's necessarily a step? Right? Why do we posit that it's a step? I can't have a positive relationship with God unless I have a positive relationship with my fellow. That's what we had said. And that's what we all agreed to, myself included. But now I'm asking everybody in the room, and the camera, myself included, why? Why do we assume that's true? And one answer I would suggest, and this is sort of what I've been taught and what I've recently learned in another shir I'm giving, actually, the Ramchal's Derech Hashem. So he talks there about how every relationship, everything in the world was for the purpose of man. All of creation is for our enlightenment and for us to be able to create a strong relationship with God. And therefore, everything that goes on in my life and every relationship I have is somehow a message, a symbolism for my relationship with God. Two of the prime ways we refer to God are Avinu and Malkeinu, my father, my king. Now, God is not really my father. God is not really my king. What does that mean when I say Avinu Malkeinu? It means that I want to build a relationship with God the same way I have a relationship with my father. A person of authority, a person of respect, a person who gave to me and continues to give to me, a person whom I love, a person who I want to honor. Same thing when I refer to Malkeinu, my king. I understand what having a relationship with God is because I understand what the relationship with having a government is. I understand what punishment and reward is. I understand rules, I understand the system, and so I can relate to God. And so I definitely would agree that the relationships between man and his fellow, woman and her fellow, okay, would be the foundational element and steps towards building a relationship with God. Okay? Good. So that answers sort of the first question. Okay? Why are the Mishpatim? Why are these day-to-day ins and outs of monetary and social details so critical coming off Har Sinai? Okay? That's our first question, because really it is the day-to-day. It's not the major explosive things that go on in life that form who we are and form our relationship with God and form whether we are good Jews or not. It's the day-to-day. It's what do I do from when I wake up to when I go to sleep every night. And it's nice that every now and then I do something huge and I go out and I really make a tremendous effort to better myself and better the world and help somebody else. And that's big and that's great. But how often do those opportunities come up? It's got to be the day-to-day. It's got to be about what do I do every day? How do I deal with my money? How do I deal with my business partners? How do I eat? How do I dress? How do I deal with family? That's really what it's all about. And while we look at that and might say that's minutiae and that's seemingly irrelevant details, really that's the foundation. That's what it's all about.
But aren't we sort of assuming that it's predicting that the Yitzhahor is going to take place among certain individuals so that they are going to become criminalized?
So hold on to that, please. Okay? I'll let you know when to bring that back. Okay? Just to answer our second question a little bit of why do we want slavery to be the one that kicks off Mishpatim? So now we've said that we need these basic elements to be the first thing coming off Sinai. Okay? But if you look later in the parsha, there are other elements. It's not just about avadim. It's about tzedakah. It's about helping the guy whose donkey is falling under the weight of its load. And you have a responsibility to go help the owner of the donkey repack the donkey. Why not open with that? That's about chesed. It's so much nicer. Why do we start with avdus? And we had one suggestion about similarities to Egypt, but I want to see if we could get something else going. Yes?
So that we're not looking down upon our brothers, on the other people, in a negative light. Somebody who's a slave,
Servant.
maybe we're not looking at an even level. So we have to be respectful of them as well, even though we may not think of them.
Okay. So to make sure that we bear in mind that even though this person is in some destitute situation, they are your bondsmen, they still deserve your human respect.
And it's not only that they're bondsmen, but very often they're in that position because they stole them, so they
Correct.
have broken the law. So
Okay. So one might look down on them, and now we're being cautioned against that. So
But
we're not
there's
really cautioned against it here. We're cautioned against it towards the end of Sefer Vayikra.
Okay.
So while it's true, I'm not sure it's going to answer our question
About
why would we start with this. Okay? Yeah.
Well, I think there's a key word here.
Right.
The word is Jewish bondsman.
Okay.
So the reference to the fact that they've specifically mentioned Jewish is how we treat Jews opposed to how we treat non-Jews.
Okay.
To some degree. There must be some relationship.
There is something. It's beyond the scope of tonight's conversation, but it's a good point.
Well, why bring it up first? This is a question we made.
Right. Still correct. Yes. Agreed.
My point that doesn't answer the question.
Right. Correct. It would still not. Meaning it would draw a distinction between Jewish bondsmen and non-Jewish bondsmen, but it still doesn't answer the question of why we start with the laws of bondsmen.
I tried to.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
Am I to understand that you rejected the notion that it is because we just came out of slavery?
I didn't reject that. No.
Because having the mentality that we had in
Right.
Egypt and coming out of there and thinking, well, somebody has to be subjugated and therefore you treat them the way you want and this and that, isn't that why we should start with that? To try and set the rules to straighten out things. You are free now. You no longer have to think the way you thought in Egypt for 400 years. You don't need to think that way anymore. That's the new way to think.
That's a new way to think. Okay. Yes, Henry.
The answer right here. It's
You've got the answer right here. So I set myself up for that because I let you guys use the stone chumash with commentary on the bottom.
Since
Yeah.
all areas of life are intertwined and holiness derives from halachically correct business dealings no less than from piety, and marriage ritual.
Okay.
Sages teaches that one who wishes to be a chassid or devoutly pious.
So that's our first
To
question.
be scrupulous in matters of civil and Torah law.
Excellent. Good. So that's the answer to the first question. Right. That's why we start with Mishpatim. Why is the first Mishpat about Avadim? Is my
Yeah,
question.
that's the question.
We're on the second question.
Yeah. Read some more.
Keep reading.
Keep reading. Let's see if we got it.
Keep reading.
Okay.
Only be done.
So I want to suggest that perhaps Avdus has two things going for it, and that's really why we start. First, Avdus, if you'll read a little bit further, but it's a 6-year cycle. Okay, a person can only be sold into slavery for a maximum of 6 years. In the 7th year, he goes free. What does that sound similar to? Shabbos. And they're in the creation of the world. Okay, the Netziv suggests, the Ramban suggests similarly that the whole, and Demis Yaakov also, though his I didn't entirely understand, but that the whole idea of Avdus, this whole 6 years of work, and in the 7th you go free, and then actually if you want to stay on, you get let out in the Yovel, which is also a 7-year cycle. Okay, it's the 50th year, but that's 7 by 7 for 49, and the 50th is the Shabbos. Okay, so that idea is reminiscent of creation, and the Yesodos of Emunah, the foundations of faith and belief, are really contained in here. Now, I didn't get as far as what exactly the foundations of faith that I can learn from the Avdus are, because they don't really go into it in great detail, but at the very least they suggest that contained, at least on some mystical level, contained in the laws of Avdus is great reference to creation, Shabbos, and the foundational elements of belief.
That's not fair.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not going to disagree with you.
I know, because
So I do have a second answer.
Yes.
Wait,
Okay.
that was my first answer. I do have a second answer before you guys storm. Okay, before you take out the pitchforks and whatnot. I have a second answer. Yeah.
But you haven't followed up on this word, Jewish.
Jewish.
Because you touched on one of the laws in which you spoke about the donkey, which is, of course, relates to hate. hating Jews. If you hate somebody, you still have to do the right thing even for the...
Beyond the scope of our discussion. It's the whole discussion of, sort of relationships between Jews and Jews and Jews and non-Jews is so much greater than I could possibly cover in our 45 minutes together tonight. And I apologize, and if you want, we can discuss it a little bit afterwards, but it's way too big for right now. Okay?
Operate like that, we'll call it security.
Okay? So, Avdus, I want to suggest, is about rehabilitation. It's about rehabilitation. It really is the prime act of chesed. And though it doesn't seem like it and doesn't look like it, it is. Think about it like this. If somebody stole from you, and then he can't pay it back, are you going to invite him to be your slave, your servant?
No, you don't trust him.
He's a criminal, right? He stole from you. Okay? And this is a major difference, in different societies, criminal systems. Okay? But I want to suggest that slavery is about rehabilitation, and slavery is really an opportunity for growth. Okay? When a person puts himself in that situation and really sees perhaps how low they've fallen, either to the point that they're going to steal, or to the point that they just absolutely can't find a job, can't support themselves, can't support their family, that they're going to need to put themselves really into somebody else's control, that's really a rock bottom. And from there, a person can only come up. And for you to take on the responsibility of being that person's master, of being that person's adon and baal, and to say, you know what, I'm going to provide for him, I'm going to give him a stable home, and I'm going to respect him, or her, because the same applies to women, or her, in the state that they're in. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to provide this opportunity for the person to better themselves. That is an act of chesed.
What even if you cannot afford it?
Meaning if you want to sell yourself, but I can't afford to buy you.
Yeah, you stole from me, but I cannot afford to give you a job in
so he'll buy you, right? Meaning, if Reuven can't,
not chesed anymore.
If Reuven can't buy the Evet, right? Let's say Reuven can't buy the Evet, okay? So then Shimon will buy the Evet. The Evet will take the money that he now earned from being bought, pay back Reuven, who he had stolen from, and go to work for Shimon. But Shimon is still giving the guy, the Eved, an opportunity. He's still giving him a second shot.
It's like any other job. Doesn't have to be a chesed. Chesed, if he stole from me and I'm going to give him a job. That's, I think
it's I would think hiring anybody in that situation would be a chesed. Okay, let's say a guy steals from me. Would you hire him?
If I need him.
Okay? Right? Even if he doesn't steal from you, it's still a chesed to hire a thief. Right?
A human being.
You're still taking a big chance on that one. And that's a chesed. I think also, as another answer, I think that Avdus, the fact that we have sort of the option open of Avdus, really tells us that we are free. If I can put myself into a situation of servitude, that means that until I do that, I'm free. And that is a foundation of Judaism, because it also says I'm not slave to my desires. A person who says, I can't control myself, the devil made me do it, or, my emotions got the better of me, is a person who says, I don't have self-control. I am not in control of myself, of my person. My actions are not my own domain. And the Torah presents us at the very beginning of Mishpatim and says, you are free. You are free people. You are not servants, but you are free. You can choose how to act. You can choose how to behave. And now I'm going to hit you with all the laws about how you're supposed to behave, and you have a right and a responsibility to choose wisely. I want to go back to this idea of Avdus being about rehabilitation.
Why does it start with that? You still didn't explain why it starts with
because
that. Could it start with anything else?
Because it is a chesed.
Right, so many other things are chesed.
But it's a big one. We had asked, why don't we start with chesed? And I'm telling you, we are.
Don't sell yourself out here.
But, okay, we are starting with chesed. We are starting with chesed. That's the point I want to make.
So chesed would be considered better than, let's say, Shabbat observance or rules?
Well, if interpersonal relationships are the foundation for relationships with God, then I might say yes.
So we gave the answer right at the beginning.
Correct.
So I still don't understand why we start with the slaves.
Okay, because slaves is I might say the ultimate act of chesed. You wanted to start with chesed, right? I'm telling you we did.
Okay.
You're asking me why this chesed? Yeah. I'm telling you because it's a really big one. Right? We got that flow. Right? We wanted to know why we started with Avdus, and I think it's because Avdus is an act of chesed.
What does Avdus mean?
I'm sorry, servitude.
Eved is a slave.
Eved, right? Avdus, the state of being an Eved. I apologize. Servitude. Okay?
How about Dim Hayinu? I was going to sing it still.
Okay. I also think there's another idea here.
Use a string or something.
Okay. All right. Let's go. Let's look now. Let's turn quickly to the end of this idea about an Eved, about a bondsman. If you look at 5 and 6, okay, 21:5 and 21:6. But if the bondsman shall say, his time is up, his 6 years have come, it's time for him to go free. But if the bondsman shall say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I shall not go free. Then his master shall bring him to the court, and they shall bring him to the door or the doorpost. And his master shall bore through his ear with the awl, and he shall serve him forever. Forever here means the Yovel, it's 50 years. Okay, well, up to 50 years, depending on when the Yovel falls out.
4 years or 24, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, till the Yovel. Okay, good. But this Eved says, I don't want to go free. Excuse me, I want to continue in the state I am in. And so, we pierce his ear. Okay, we pierce his ear. And Rashi asks, quoting the Midrash, why the ear? Why do we pierce the ear? Why not some other body part? Why not make some other mark or do something else to show that this person is an eternal bondsman? Why the ear?
It's kind of permanent.
Why not the nose?
Yeah, very clearly you can see it.
Okay.
Why not the nose?
The nose.
Because you'll hear with your
The
ear.
ear doesn't
You
have-
hear with your ear. Good.
Well, the ear doesn't have.
Come on, give me more.
You don't have
hear
to-
with the ear.
He takes orders.
Okay.
He listens.
I would suggest he heard something else. Okay? The Torah tells us, Rashi quotes the Medrash, and there are 3 different versions. The Gemara in Kiddushin says, based on the pasuk in Vayikra, Ki li b'nei Yisrael avadim avadayim. Okay? The Jewish people are to me, capital M, are to me as servants, not to another human. And this person, this guy goes, and he buys for himself another master. He makes himself a servant, not only to God, but he makes himself a servant to another person. He makes himself an Eved to an Eved, essentially. Okay? And because his ear had heard, don't become an Eved to an Eved, but rather be my Eved, God says, his ear should be pierced. The Yerushalmi Kiddushin says differently. They quote a different pasuk. The Asaras HaDibros, the second one, Lo yeh lecha Elohim achirim al panai. You shall not have false gods. This person threw off the yoke of heaven and puts on himself the yoke of a different master. And therefore, the ear that had heard, do not have other gods, should be pierced. And finally, the Mechilta says, the Midrash tells us, the ear that had heard, lo tignov, do not steal. That's actually wrong. It's do not kidnap. Okay, and that's a little bit beyond here, but it's kidnap rather than steal in the Asaras HaDibros, because all the other things in the Dibros are capital crimes. Theft is not a capital crime. Kidnapping is a capital crime. Okay, and therefore in the Dibros it was about kidnapping, not monetary theft. But either way, lo tignov, the ear that had heard, do not steal, went and stole and got caught and couldn't pay it back and ended up as a servant, the ear should be pierced. Okay? So that's...
Why?
Why what?
Why put him through an additional painful experience when he's already in a stage? I mean...
Because he's choosing not to go free.
No, he didn't choose.
Sure he did.
No.
At this point, at the end. You pierce the ear at the end.
Yeah,
At the end of what?
At the end of the 6 years, before he goes free.
Oh, before he goes free?
Yes. That's why, yeah.
But
5 and 6.
But he's not going free.
His time comes.
Right.
Okay, again, let's set this up.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Today, Reuven gets sold into slavery.
Right.
Into servitude. Okay?
Right.
6 years from today, Reuven will be set to be set free.
Right,
Reuven will go free in 6 years from today.
right.
Doesn't want to
Okay?
go.
He doesn't want to go.
Oh, so that's, okay, now I
So,
understand, yeah.
we pierce his ear.
Okay,
So
because he
when you
doesn't
talk
want to.
piercing, what do you sound like? Didn't a lot of people have pierced ears then? Was it that much a bigger pierce, or what was so?
But why the ear? Why do we make the mark in the ear was our question.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
And we're answering because the ear that heard any one of these 3 commandments, either don't steal, or don't have other masters, or don't have other masters, essentially. Okay? This ear heard that, and the person didn't follow through on those commands. Therefore, his ear should be pierced.
Like a punishment.
Right.
Kind of.
So 6 years that he was a slave, doesn't that also
That's all?
as an affront to the rule that says
Thank you.
thou shalt
Excellent.
not be?
Baruch shekivanta. Excellent. That was my question. 6 years ago is when he violated, not now. Why only piercing his ear now?
Because he doesn't want to go.
So what?
No.
Remember, why are we piercing his ear? Because his ear heard the commandment and he violated them. But when did his ear
He
hear?
could have been set free though. He was going to be a free man one day. Now he.
When did he violate?
Not, it doesn't matter.
When did he violate?
It's the freedom.
6 years ago.
What does the Torah tell? Okay,
He violated-
again. The Torah tells us we pierce his ear before he goes free. So we ask, why do we pierce the ear? So we answered, because he violated these commands. And we're asking, when did he violate the command? 6 years ago. Why are we piercing the ear now, not 6 years ago?
If he goes free, he doesn't get his ear pierced.
That's correct.
Okay, so you're only piercing the ear because he wants to stay, even though he committed whatever crime he committed.
He's saying I don't want to be
He's-
free.
Yeah, he's not.
But he
And
disobeyed.
therefore what?
He disobeyed.
Again, we're not addressing the essential question.
Yeah.
You're telling me, I've got 2 suggestions on the table, we're piercing his ear because he doesn't want to go free. What does the ear have to do with his freedom? We've suggested that the ear has to do with violating the commands that put him into servitude in the first place.
Which you did 6 years ago.
And therefore his ear should have been pierced 6 years ago. Why should his ear be pierced at the end is our question. I'm sorry? Na'aseh v'nishma.
Yeah, something because he heard and he's doing the wrong thing?
Right, but he did the wrong thing. That's where we keep going.
He
He's
did-
not doing the wrong thing now.
He did the wrong thing.
6 years ago.
That's when he should have been
paid
pierced.
for it, but now he's staying in the status of doing the wrong thing by choice.
He's not stealing again.
No, but he's staying in the status of a person who stole.
And when I sell myself
He's
voluntarily, let's say not to steal them. Let's say I sell myself voluntarily.
Yeah, so have you pierced
He's
ear
still
right
choosing
away?
I'm choosing to sell myself into servitude,
Yeah.
which I shouldn't do.
That's right.
Why am I not getting my ear pierced right at the
away.
beginning?
Yes. That's the question.
Doesn't it say here that once it gets ear piercing permanently?
Yeah, until the Yovel. Yes.
Okay, so he doesn't get pierced immediately because there's a possibility he'll be free in 6.
Well,
If once it's pierced, everyone knows.
correct. Well,
in
right.
6 years, he
But
might
the
be free.
Yovel, but it's not, again, forever does not really mean forever. Forever means until the Yovel. Now, in theory, if right now is the 40th year of the Yovel cycle, let's say,
Yeah.
okay? 6 years go by, it's now the 46th year of the Yovel cycle.
3 more years.
He chooses to stay on. How long will he be staying until the Yovel?
1 more years.
3 more years.
3 more years.
Okay? Which one is longer, 6 or 3?
6.
6. So shouldn't his based on the logic that you put forth, so then some of the time his ear will be pierced at the end of the 6, and some of the time at the beginning of the 6, depending on whichever one's longer. Either way, forever doesn't really mean forever. So he certainly has the possibility of getting out.
So why don't they
again,
pierce the ear right away?
Are you
I
suggesting
just want to
that
make sure we're all on the same page.
Are
Yeah.
you suggesting that this, by not becoming a free man, he's committing a sin again? Is that a sin in itself that has to be punished by,
It would seem-
by identification?
Yeah, so
It would seem that way.
What do you think? You would think so.
It would seem that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, let's go back. What did we say the reason for the ear pierce is? Because the ear heard a command and didn't follow through. Now we know, and certainly, well, I think we all know, some from different sides, the men and the women, but we all know there are 2 different kinds of hearing. There's the very physical sort of hearing, Right? The sound waves that my voice is producing travel through the air and reverberate in your ear, and you hear it. And then there's sort of a more spiritual, emotional kind of hearing, which is understanding and really making an impact. Right? For example, when your wife tells you to take out the garbage, you hear it, but you don't really hear it. Right? Because the garbage is still there the next morning. All right? So there are two different kinds of hearing. For example, in the Torah, last week's parsha, we opened Parshas Yisro with the words, Vayishma Yisro, and Yisro heard. And Rashi asks, what did Yisro hear? And Rashi answers, he heard about the Exodus and about the war with Amalek, and that inspired him to come. Now you tell me, didn't the whole world hear about the Exodus? The whole world over knew about this. They all heard it. Where were they? Because Yisro really heard it. Yisro heard it on a much more emotional level. Okay? It was a deeper sort of hearing. So Yisro was inspired to act because of the way he heard it. All right? Good. Hold that. There's two kinds of hearing. Hold that for a second. How do you become a servant? Two ways. Either you can't support yourself, so you sell yourself, or you steal and can't pay it back, so you get sold in order to pay it back. Right? That's how somebody can become a servant. The Gemara in Kiddushin, in trying to tell us how bad the Avera, the Isser, the prohibition of violating the Shavias, violating the Shemitah year is, goes through a long cycle to prove that. Now Shemitah, let's remember, Shemitah is what says that in the 7th year you can't work the field and you can't have business dealings with the fruit either. It's ownerless. Okay? Now, if a person decides to sell and deal in business with the fruit of the 7th year, the Gemara in Kiddushin says that not only will he not make money off that, he will lose money from this. And he will become poor, and he will need to sell his movable objects, the items around his home. He'll need to sell his furniture, and his books, and his clothes, and all sorts of other things. And then the Gemara says, lo hirgish, if he doesn't feel it, whatever it is at this point, he doesn't feel it, and he continues to sell fruit of the 7th year, he will continue to lose money until he has to sell his fields. Lo ba'as liyado, it does not come to his hand. We'll hold on to that phrase for a second. And he continues to do wrong. He will eventually need to sell his daughter into servitude in order to have some money. Now, selling the daughter, we see this as somewhat arcane. I want to just explain the social context of that again. If a person is so poor that he cannot support himself and his family anymore, the best thing for him to do is to find a family where his daughter can serve. And he'll get some money from that. Hopefully he'll be able to get himself back on his feet. His daughter will be taken care of. She will earn some money, and she will learn a trade. And come the age of majority, which in the Torah is 12, when she can then go out and support herself, then she will be let free. Okay? So that's just the social context for it. Not that we should think that it's not slavery. It's bondsmanship. Or indentured servitude. Okay, it is not slavery. Lo ba'as liyado, if he still does not come to his hand and he continues to do wrong, he will then need to borrow money. And in order to secure a loan, he will borrow with interest. Also, violating the Torah. Lo ba'as liyado, if he still doesn't get it, then he will need to sell himself into slavery. He'll become so impoverished, he will need to sell himself, because he really won't be able to make ends meet. Okay? And that's the sequence of events if you look in Parshas Bahar. Good. So why did he become poor then, according to the Gemara in Kiddushin? He became poor because of what phrase? Lo ba'as liyado. It did not come to his hand. Or lo hirgish. He did not feel. What is it that he didn't feel, do you think?
The commandment.
The commandment or the consequence. What was it that he didn't feel? The consequence.
Oh, consequence.
The consequence. He was trying to do business, but he was doing it be'isser. He was using 7th year fruits, which he can't do. And so, his money-making ventures are not making money. So he has to sell off some stuff. And he continues to do wrong. And he continues to lose money. And so he sells off some more stuff. And he continues to do wrong and he continues to lose money. Lo bas liando. Lo hirgish. He doesn't feel it. He doesn't get it. He doesn't hear it. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't see what's going on in his life. God is giving him signs of what he is doing wrong, and he's not catching on. And so he continues to do wrong. He could have changed his ways, but he doesn't. Let's go back to our original question. Our question, why do you pierce the ear at the end of the 6 years as opposed to the beginning of the 6 years? Yes, he sinned at the beginning of the 6 years. Absolutely. He shouldn't have sold himself into slavery, and he shouldn't have stolen and put himself in the situation where he would need to be sold. He shouldn't have violated those commandments. True. But when does he really violate them? When does he take the next step in violating them? When 6 years later, he sees everything that went on. He sees that he became so poor he needed to sell himself. He violates the command and he sells himself, and he doesn't learn his lesson. It's 6 years later. He hasn't learned his lesson, and he says, you know what? I don't want to grow. I don't want to hear the lessons that God is sending me. I don't want to understand. I don't want to be rehabilitated. I want to stay stuck where I am. That's when he gets his ear pierced. Because that's when he doesn't hear it. That's when we really know that his ear has not heard what his ear is supposed to have been heard. Okay? Rabbeinu Yonah, in the Shari Tshuva, in his classic work on basically the ways of tshuva, really how to do tshuva, how to repent, and how to come back to God, says that a person who sins has done one thing wrong. A person who continues to sin, with each subsequent sin, has done two more things wrong. It's an exponentially wrong act. Why? Because when you do one thing wrong, and then there's a consequence for it, and you do it again, then it's that much worse. Okay, we understand that. So he gives the example. He says, you've got a group of thieves who are caught. They're stealing from the government, whatever it is they're doing. They get caught, they're thrown in jail. And one night, while the guards are asleep, one of the guys bores through the wall of the jail and escapes. And Andy Dufresne, he escapes, gets out. And 6 of the 7 members of this gang escape. And one guy stays behind. Noble, right? He stays behind. And the guard comes in the morning and he finds him and he beats him mercilessly. He says, you fool. You had a way out. You had a way out. You could have improved your situation and you chose not to. And Rabbeinu Yonah says, when one of us sins and then we don't do tshuva, we don't repent our ways and we instead sin again, you fool. You could have gotten out of this. There was a way out. It's called tshuva. It's called returning to God. And here instead you're sinning again. So for this person, for this Eved, to say, I don't want to grow. I don't want to have been rehabilitated. I want to stay stuck as a servant. I want to continue being a bondsman, being an Eved. That's when we really know that he hasn't heard his lessons. He has not listened to the circumstances of his life. He has not seen fit to find a way out and improve his lot in life, and instead wants to stay stuck where he is. And that is when we say, pierce the ear, because the ear has not heard anything. Is that a question? Yeah, go for it.
Big question.
Yeah.
So every other society had a method of punishment, whether it's incarceration or cutting off your arm if you stole, etc. So the Judaism professed that you could rehabilitate people through this method. But here it's prescribed that they almost realized that many of them weren't going to be rehabilitated.
I don't know many. I think we provide that some may not.
Okay, so my question is, which I don't want an answer for, is there some way to find out, did the method ever work as far as attempting to rehabilitate? I'm not talking about the one who falls into debt.
Once again, now we're into criminology.
Okay, again, but I don't want the answer.
It's a good question.
But I don't want the answer.
Right.
But is there some place to research that idea?
Google.
No.
I don't know.
Is there something documented that somebody has written about?
I would imagine schools of psychology and or criminology.
No, I'm talking about Jewish.
Jewish sources for whether, I mean...
This method of rehabilitation.
First of all, that's not practiced today anymore.
It would seem, I mean, the history of Judaism certainly has periods where we were sinning and has periods where we were not, where things really were the way they should be. I would have to imagine then that for the times that things were going right is presumably because the system was working. I don't know. Do I know offhand of any scholars that have done the research on this question? No, I don't know any offhand.
Are you asking them if any of these bondsmen have come out of servitude?
No, I'm asking if the whole method of rehabilitating without incarceration. Obviously, everybody else incarcerated, they didn't have jail.
If it's in the Torah, it must have worked.
Oh no, because they had an escape clause.
Right. So again, I don't know offhand of anybody that's done any Jewish scholar or professor that's done the research extensively or exhaustively. I don't know. We can sort of research that together if you want, but it's again, I don't know offhand, and it's certainly beyond the scope of our discussion.
Okay.
And it's a good question.
We're not using it today, so how do we?
Not using it today is really not because it doesn't work. That's really because we don't have power.
You don't have
power. We're not in control. Right? It'd be very difficult for a Beit Din
Why wouldn't they use it in
to sort
Israel,
of function,
for instance?
Because the Beit Din doesn't have control there either. That's a social commentary which I probably shouldn't get into. But I mean, it is true that the religious court does not have the ultimate authority in the way the state of Israel runs, and nobody can disagree with that. That's a fact on the ground. Okay, so why don't they do it? I don't know. You'd have to ask the Israeli government. You'd have to ask the Memshalah.
The majority of Israelis aren't Orthodox.
And I would imagine that's a part of it, right? Presumably, King Solomon used this system, right? King David, King Saul, right, and all through the history. At the point at which we were in, we're in Bavel, we're in exile, we're not, in control, okay, and we are not being led by a king, by a Navi, a prophet, by a Beit Din, then we don't really have the ability to do these things.
So you foresee this coming back eventually?
Presumably, yeah, God willing, any day now. Right? Right? All right? So yeah, I do envision this coming back. Absolutely. Okay. Let's look at another idea. The Mechilta, again, the Midrash we quoted before. And again, we'll talk a little bit about sort of theft. Okay? On Chaf Beis Gimel. Okay? The Mechilta, their quote, talking about stealing. All right? Im himaksei timaksei v'yado, it's on page 426 if you want to read along. Im himaksei timaksei v'yado hagneva, mishor ad chamor ad sech chayim, shnayim yishalem. Okay? If the theft shall be found in his possession, whether a live ox or donkey or sheep or goat, he shall pay double. These are the beginnings of the laws of theft. Person steals, this is not in going into slavery, into servitude, okay? Yeah?
I have a question about this paying double. He takes a guy's, he gets caught with it, he has to pay double. Does that mean he gives the original one back that isn't his and pays two more?
No, one more.
So that does. It's not really...
It's the principal plus one.
Yeah, okay, that's what
it's the principal plus one. Two is principal plus one.
Yeah.
Okay? So, if a guy steals, and there are different, and the Mechilta says here, there are 7 different kinds of thieves. 7 different kinds, 7 different punishments, 7 different situations. Anybody want to throw one out there? Not the ways you steal, okay, but the different halachic classifications of theft. Well, one is the guy who pays double. That's our first one. That's really number 5.
4 and 5.
The sheep and the ox. Good. Okay, that's 4 and 5. So that's number 6. We're going to group those together. The daled ve'hei. If somebody steals in earlier psukim actually, but if somebody steals a sheep or an ox, then he pays back 5 times in place of the ox and 4 times in place of the sheep. Okay? So that's numbers 5 and 6 in my list. Though we could call them numbers 1 and 2. Okay? Of different kinds or different payments. So we mentioned before, don't steal and don't kidnap. Right? We said really we sometimes use the words wrong, but kidnapping is a form of theft, and that one is punishable by death. Okay? That's capital. Good. So that's number 7.
But the punishment?
Death.
Oh, okay. That's simple enough.
Yeah. Not simple, straightforward.
Even though no ornaments come to the person you kidnapped and they've been freed.
It's capital crime.
Well,
okay? So, number 1 is ginevas das, the stealing of one's knowledge, which is a very complicated topic, but misleading, garnering false goodwill, okay, undeserved goodwill. But doing that where there's no monetary gain is category 1, theft. Category 2 theft would then be misleading a person where there is monetary gain or monetary loss. 2, okay? Stealing isurei hana'ah, stealing things from which you are halachically prohibited from deriving benefit, it's an avera, but you don't pay anything back because you can't do anything with it. 4 is where you just simply give back the object, but there's no penalty payment. 5 is where there's the penalty payment. 6 is where there's the 4 or the 5 times amount as the penalty payment. And 7 is the capital crime of kidnapping. So there are 7 different kinds. But then the Mechilta says there's actually one more. Stealing divrei Torah. Stealing the words of Torah without getting into copyright law. Stealing the words of Torah. You and I are sort of researching something together, we're learning a piece of Gemara together, and you come up with fantastic Kiddush, a novel idea, and I just hijack it. I pass it off as my own. It's not a nice thing to do, right? Or, I don't know, I don't have a sefer, and again, without copyright law, okay? But if you have a transcript of a sefer, a book that I want, I can go, and without your permission, open up your book, and copy it, word for word, and take it home with me. Okay? And the Mechilta says, when you do that kind of gneva, it's good. Zacha la'atzmo, he has merited for himself. And a person who does this will be mitmana ala tzibur. He will become a community leader. Presumably, the Mechilta thinks this is a good thing to do. Stealing divrei Torah is good. And there are a lot of skeptical faces around the room saying, really? You're stealing? How could it be good? Right? And certainly once we throw in that then you merit from it. It's not bad enough, right, that stealing divrei Torah is not awesome. But you're going to benefit from it. You're going to be appointed as a community leader. It doesn't sit well, right?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So there's a Gemara in Nida that teaches, this is an idea that I think a lot of us have heard before. When a baby is in the womb of its mother, the fetus is in the womb of its mother, the angel comes to the fetus and teaches this fetus the entire Torah. Entirely. From the beginning to the end, everything. Kol Torah kula. Every last idea. And then, as the baby is born, the angel comes and touches the baby on the lip, and the baby forgets everything. Right? Some want to suggest that's why there's the little indentation there. Okay, good. So the baby has learned, the fetus has learned everything in the womb, and then as it is being born, it's touched and it forgets everything. Okay? Forgets everything. So, why? Why? Anybody? Why would this happen? Don't all call out at once. No ideas.
So that we can have the free choice in life?
To choose whether to learn.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's a good one.
Good. All right. So 1, it's a preparation. Right? This way, when I see something, it's not the first time I see it, it's the second time I see it. It might come that much more easily. And for those of us, myself included, who often have a hard time learning or understanding something, think how much harder it would have been had you not learned it once already. Okay? Perhaps. It's to teach us just that it's possible. A person can really learn all of Torah. It might be very, very, very difficult. But if the fetus did it, perhaps we could do it. It's a level to aspire to. It's a challenge. But it's a level to aspire to. Perhaps, like was suggested, it's that we can work at it. I can toil. I can make that effort. And when I then understand a tough piece of Gemara, or I can make sense out of psukim that I couldn't make sense of before, when I can do that, there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of achievement and accomplishment. And I've now taken something from the potential to the actual. I've actualized my knowledge. I've taken skill, I've taken effort, and I've put that together into something that now I understand. Okay? So, every fetus has learned all of Torah. There is no personal ownership on Torah. Moshe came down from the mountain and taught it to all of us. And Moshe said to us at that point, he said, I learned it, I was taught it, and I'm teaching it to you all without a price.
Every Jewish fetus.
Yes, correct. Okay? I didn't pay God for it, says Moshe, and I'm not charging you. And you should do the same thing. Yes?
If the fetus cannot express itself of Torah, then he is absorbing it perhaps to his soul.
Okay.
Whereas as he becomes physical and he's expelled from the womb,
Okay.
he now has the ability to, he's not he has to learn through the process of learning. I don't think, I'm trying to say it, but I don't know how to express it. There's got to be something mystical about the fact that
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, there's definitely something mystical about that. Agreed.
okay.
Yes?
I'm going to put him in the advanced class.
Correct. There is something mystical about it, and now we have to learn that on a much more physical, rudimentary level. Agreed.
Okay.
Yes. Okay? Let me just, I want to sort of continue with the thought. Okay? So, why was this done? For any one of these reasons. Okay? And Moshe comes down from the mountain and says, God taught me Torah without charging me, and I'm teaching it to you without charging you. And I want you to do the same. We're actually told, the halacha is, you cannot charge somebody to teach them Torah. It's how the teachers and schools and tutors do it. You're charging them for your time. Because had you not been spending the time there, you would have been working in the stock market. So since you're choosing to, instead of working in stocks or law or medicine or whatever else, you're choosing to work as a teacher, you're being paid for the work that you otherwise would have gotten done. And I know the pay scales aren't even. Okay? But really you're getting paid for the time you're spending, not so much the teaching. Okay? You're really not supposed to charge for these things. Really not supposed to charge, really not supposed to pay. Shul sometimes charge for classes. That's essentially for overhead. Because were the constituents not to pay, there would be no building, and there wouldn't be a salary for the rabbi to spend his time teaching the classes. Okay, I know that just sounds like you're really paying the guy, but it's sort of the way around. Okay, because Torah really is not supposed to be only for those who can afford it. Torah is really supposed to be for everyone. There's a story, actually, with Hillel. A story where Hillel wanted to go to a shiur, wanted to go to a class, and he couldn't get in because he couldn't afford to pay for the class. So what did he do? It's a famous story, a lot of people nodding their heads, right? He climbs up on the roof of the building, puts his ear to the window, and he listens to the shiur. Okay? And the Gemara praises him for this. This is what he was supposed to do. Why? Because Torah is meant to be free. Torah is really for everyone. Alright? So, the baby, this fetus who had learned it all and then forgot it, just because he forgot it doesn't mean it's not his anymore. It is his. He forgot. But now when me and that other person are learning together, really that chiddush, that piece of novella, that was both of ours. Wasn't his really, it belongs to all of us. Okay? And then, so why then am I rewarded? Right? This answers the question of perhaps why I can take it. Why I can steal. My chavrusa, I was telling him this idea, and he said to me, he goes, so you're not going to quote who you saw this idea in, right? And he says to me, you saw this in a sefer? I said, yes. And he says, are you going to quote the source? I said, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to steal it. I probably shouldn't. Happens to be, I took this from a sefer called Midrash or Chadash. I actually don't remember who the author is, I would tell you. The sefer called Midrash or Chadash, I picked it up, it's kind of an obscure sefer. I picked it up at one of these like weird book sales maybe 10 years ago. Fantastic though. So he suggests that really you're not stealing because it really already belongs to all of us. Okay? So then why are you rewarded? Fine, it's not wrong. And it's allowed. But why are you rewarded? Why is my act of genevas divrei Torah something that will be rewarded? It's good that I do it, and mismana al ativra, I will become a community leader. Okay? So he suggests that everybody in life, and we know this, all of us have different dispositions. By nature or nurture, each of us is fundamentally different. Some of us are better at math, some at verbal skills. Some of us can play sports, some of us cannot. Some of us are kind, loving, nurturing, giving people by nature. Some of us are not. Some of us have a taiva to steal and are naturally jealous and envious. Some of us are not. The Gemara gives, the Midrash also gives an example. It says a person with a bloodlust. What should he do?
A what?
A bloodlust.
A blood?
Bloodlust. A lust for blood.
Blood lust.
Lust. A lust for blood.
Vampire.
Kind of. Okay? Or a murderer. Right? Somebody who will go out and wantonly kill people, I might say he has a bloodlust. Okay? Now, couldn't I channel that in a proper way? Asks Chazal. Yes, I can. I could become a butcher or a soldier.
Yeah.
I could kill animals.
Yeah.
Ritually slaughter an animal. I'm killing. I get to see the blood flowing out. That on some level can satisfy a person like that. So the Gemara suggests channel that in the right way. Become a soldier. channel it in the right way. Okay? So, I think that might be the same thing here. The person who is feeling words of Torah, what is his natural disposition? To steal, to be envious, to be jealous, to take what is not his. And so this person can go out and can take a gun and can rob people, can sneak into people's homes and take their possessions, can steal their cars, can, hack into their bank accounts and whatever else. Instead, what does he do? He channels that into a way that says, I'm going to spread the word of Torah. He takes his negative midah and he turns it into a positive one. And he says, I'm going to take somebody else's Torah, maybe I'll pass it over as my own, and maybe I shouldn't do that, and maybe I'll copy out of Sfarim that I don't own. Again, copyright law aside. But he's channeling a bad midah, a negative characteristic, into a positive action. And a person who can do that, mitmana ala tzibur, that's the person who you want to have as your community leader. That's the person who says, I know I have challenges in life. I know I have faults and I have deficiencies and I have shortcomings. But I also know what I'm going to do about them. I know how I'm going to channel everything about my being towards a positive effort as an act of chesed, as an act of Torah, as an act of mitzvah.